Dumelang. Welcome to Face the Nation. My name is Clement Manyatela. Great to have you with us here on SABC News. On the show tonight, what is former Minister Malusi Gigaba's next plan now that the state has declined his request for funding for his legal fees in his corruption case? His lawyer, Nicholas Kourie, joins us tonight. Also on the show, how is the Health Department going to ensure the controversy surrounding the Health Department's AIDS drug tender is not going to disrupt treatment for HIV patients? There are concerns that 2 companies awarded the share of the tender went to business rescue in December, and the department wasn't even aware of their financial status. How did that happen? Khadija Jamaloodien is the head of procurement at the department and joins us. And then later, the first meeting of the Board of Peace, which is expected to oversee the running of Gaza and manage its reconstruction, took place today. So we'll find out what was resolved and how that will affect the people of Gaza. Maya Ungar is a United Nations analyst at the International Crisis Group in Washington, joining us tonight. We'll also bring in SALGA and ask them why they're against the president's plan to go after municipalities who are failing to deliver services. The organization doesn't believe that criminal charges must be laid against municipal managers in their personal capacity for violating the National Water Act. Tamin Gubani is a SALGA NEC member and they speak to us tonight. But first, my comment. So the suspended National Deputy Police Commissioner Shadrack Sibiya continued his testimony at the Madlanga Commission today. On the second day of his testimony, the Commission dealt extensively with the disbandment of the PKTT. Sibiya told the Commission that he found out about the decision to disband the task team in the media.
I'm not basing my response based on the Murray report. There was a build-up of a series of meetings that happened, including the Murray report was part of the whole thing.
Yes, so I'm not saying it's the only thing. I'm saying it was one of the events.
I'll feel comfortable when we talk about the fact that there was a build-up. There's been several meetings and consultations, so it never could come as a surprise because it wasn't just a shock.
Sibiya told the Commission that even though he signed the letter, he wasn't its author.
This letter, from the very onset, it is known that I am not the author of this letter.
So, again, we have a signature by you on a document that's a lengthy document, but you disavow the authorship of this, the ownership of this letter.
It's not
comment on that.
It's not a difficult question that you are asking. I'm just worried that we all agree that it comes from the Office of the National Commissioner, well, and that it can be signed by me. And when I read it and I went through the contents, to me, it was a plan on how to go about in disbanding. I signed it.
The chair of the Commission, Justice Madlanga, highlighted some inconsistencies with Sibiya's version.
Later in the year, in the end of the year, the 31st, I see a letter coming through. It will come as a shock, but not surprised because I know about it. It was once raised. And then my job will be to then call the chair and say, Chair, I see this letter and I'm surprised or I'm shocked that
You see, you can't avoid saying you are shocked, you are surprised. You can't avoid saying that.
I'm saying
because that's actually what should ordinarily happen in those circumstances. You yourself cannot avoid being shocked or surprised, General.
So the question we are asking you tonight is, are you satisfied with the explanation Shadrach Sibiya has given around his role regarding the disbandment of the PKTT? You can send us a WhatsApp voice note right now on 060-571-2664. That's 060-571-2664. Remember to tell us your name and your surname and where you're sending that voice note from, and please keep it at 30 seconds. Alternatively, you can send us an X at Face the Nation SABC. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. The state has refused to cover the legal costs of former Minister of Public Enterprises, Dr Malusi Gigaba, in his high-profile corruption trial involving Transnet. Gigaba argues that the decisions forming the basis of the charge were taken in his official capacity as a cabinet minister. He appeared before the Gauteng High Court today for the formal enrollment of the matter. He's charged alongside former Transnet executives relating to a controversial locomotive procurement program. Nicholas Kourie is Dr Malusi Gigaba's lawyer and joins us now. Thank you so much for making time for us, Nicholas. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
So your client made an application for this financial assistance to the Department of Justice. It's now been declined. Does he need this assistance to settle the entire legal bill, or this is assistance with obtaining the required hard drive storage capacity for evidence disclosure in his defense?
So firstly, we've been of the view, and we've taken the position that he is entitled to legal funding in its totality for legal representation, and together with that it carries all the disbursement costs. So if we're going to be briefing an advocate to take the matter forward, a junior and a senior counsel, then that's what we would use to tap into those type of funds for. Similarly, with the hard drives that are required, we would also use the money for that.
Okay, and how much money are we looking here? Because my understanding is that you have estimated an amount of approximately 50,000 Rand, but the state earlier today said that the hard drive is actually about 3,000 Rand, the one that is necessary for the disclosure of the docket.
So what was put to the legal representatives, and it was put to me actually by the state, was that we would need 11 hard drives, each with carrying a capacity of 5 terabytes, to load what the state wanted to disclose to us. The state later then stated that they wanted, that they only required a 5 terabyte hard drive to disclose docket content on, and the rest of the content, the other 50 terabytes, would be hard drive material relating to server software of the other companies that are involved in the case. It was dished out as an optional kind of disclosure if any of the other defendants, or co-accused rather, would want to tap into that. So us wanting to take a holistic view of the matter, and it would be prudent for us to advise our client in doing so, we would want the entire call it buffet that the state's offering.
Yeah. So on what basis is your client, Dr Malusi Gigaba, making this application to the state?
So I believe it's from the State Attorneys Act. There's certain requirements that follow there that you have to tap into when you want state funding, one of which is that the charges emanate whilst you were performing or discharging your duties in office. There are other requirements. We've honed into a few of them just for the time being. We will raise certain further requirements as time goes by that emanate from case law as well.
Okay, so my understanding, speaking of case law, my understanding is that there was a time that the Solicitor General developed a firm policy passed by Cabinet that actually prevents government officials accused of corruption and other crimes from being able to access state funding for their legal costs. And you may be aware of the case of the former President Jacob Zuma, because this is what he was trying to argue for. So for years, his argument was that he was entitled to such funding because the corruption offenses he stood accused of were allegedly committed in the course and scope of his duties. But even the Supreme Court of Appeal said there was no basis for this funding. And then There's a court as recent as December that refused Zuma's bid to appeal a ruling that forces him to repay 28 million rand spent on his legal fees. Isn't that case law that should perhaps guide you and your client?
It definitely is. It's amongst other case law that we are willing to look at and have to look at when we do take the next steps. We have got a host of options available to us currently right now. Either we take the state attorney's outcome on review of rejecting state funding, or we respond to the letter and we try to take another bite at the cherry and appeal to them again. These are the options we've got. Either way, we are going to have to look at deeply into the case law, deeply into the legislation. It is a fact-sensitive matter.
Yeah.
You rightfully quote the Zuma case. It's very fact-sensitive, so we're going to see which case law obviously applies more closely to our set of facts.
Okay, but you do acknowledge that the Zuma case is going to be quite instrumental as precedents, and also I suppose the State Attorneys Act, because it says that you can only be defended in circumstances where the crime committed occurred during the scope of your duties. And in fact, the example that has been given before, it says it's like a police officer who shoots someone during a gun battle. And I'm not sure if, based on what this State Attorneys Act says, is actually applicable for your client.
Like I said, we're going to have to look at everything holistically. There's case law that dates back to the 50s, that there's case law that came out fresh out of the judiciary bun right now. We're going to have to look at everything to try and put our best foot forward for and behalf of our client.
Okay. Is legal aid an option for him?
Everything's an option for him at this current stage.
Okay. I also want to ask a bit about the conflict of interest here, because this is something else that was raised in court, a potential conflict of interest that was flagged, because it appears the lawyers representing Dr. Gigaba also represent a possible witness in the state. Are you able to clarify that for us?
Yes, so in a nutshell, what has gone on there is that our firm, Ian Levitt Attorneys, are currently representing a witness in other Transnet proceedings. We've been advised now that witness in those proceedings will be utilized as a witness in these these Transnet proceedings, the ones that Dr. Gigaba is a co-accused in. So with that being said, we're going to have to consult with both of our clients, as well as the state, consider our position, and obviously make the right ethical decision to move forward on either one of our clients.
Okay, but broadly speaking, your client is, and you as the legal counsel are quite ready for trial and for him to defend himself?
Absolutely. For Dr. Gigaba, we are 100% ready for trial. We need to look at the docket first, that's foremost, but as it stands, based on the preliminary consultations we've had with our client, we armed and equipped, he's prepared a defense, and we are ready for trial.
All right. Nicholas Kourie, thank you so much for speaking to us. He speaks on behalf of his client, Dr. Malusi Gigaba. We'll be back after the break. Now, members of Parliament have questioned the Health Department about the process used to award an antiretroviral tender worth about 15 billion rand. This follows two pharmaceutical companies appointed to supply the medication entering business rescue. MPs have questioned the department on whether due diligence was applied when awarding this tender. Health Minister Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, who appeared before Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Health, together with his senior officials, has assured Parliament that the tender hiccups will not impact the HIV treatment program. Khadija Jamaloodien is the Chief Director for Health Product Procurement at the National Health Department. Thank you so much for making time for us. Khadija, good evening.
Good evening, Clement. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for making time. So let's start maybe with what has been raised as a matter of concern here by these members of Parliament. There are these two companies that were awarded a share of this big contract. They have now got into business rescue just days after the tender began. in December. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So just to give you an example of the timeline, so the contract was awarded in August. The contract start date was the 1st of December, and we learned of the business rescue on the CIPC website on the 9th of December.
Okay. How did you not know, as the department, about the financial status confronting these two companies? I mean, this is what I would imagine you should have picked up when conducting the due diligence on companies that bid for the tender.
So the due diligence that we do on companies is, the registration with the CIPC, the tax status with SARS, whether they are registered on the National Treasury website, the CSD. We look at the products in terms of the registration. We look at the regulatory requirements from our regulator, which is the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority. And we understand that, when all of those checks are in place, we accept that the companies are able to bid. So we don't specifically do any financial checks on them because we have been doing business with these companies for many years. So they're not new to the environment. And they're not they don't just supply antiretrovirals. Bar supplies, creams, ointments, etc. And Innovator supplies other tablets. So they're not new, and we have done business with them in the past.
Isn't the difference here that, have you dealt with them in cases where it involves this amount of money? Because we're talking 15 billion rand here. And yes, these are not the only two companies that take a share of that. There are other companies here. In a matter like this, where it's quite sensitive, the risks are high, there's a lot of money involved, isn't that somehow requiring you to be extra cautious as the department? So if it means you get in perhaps an independent auditing firm, that's what you do.
So that would be something that we look at in the future. But right now, it's not a legal requirement to look at the financial status of a particular company. Financial statements are required in terms of specific tenders. If it is a specific tender requirement, since we've taken over the tenders from National Treasury, and even when National Treasury did those tenders, financial statements and financial records were not a requirement.
So even in cases where we're talking 15 billion rand worth of a tender?
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
But do you accept,
so we don't look at financial status.
Yeah, but do you accept, though, that that's quite risky? And this is why you and I are speaking tonight. Because you don't examine the balance sheet, because you didn't ask for financial statements, we are sitting with a situation where two companies that actually bid for this tender actually went into business rescue, which is information that you would have had you been extra cautious in your due diligence because of the amount of money, at the very least, that is involved in this case.
So, yes, I think the financial risk is one risk which we've never encountered before. The other risks that we are very careful about are the regulatory risks. So if SAPRA, for example, shuts down the company for any specific reason, if they supply us a product that's not registered with SAPRA, if there are logistics challenges that we become aware of. So the financial risk is just one risk. And as I said, we've done business with these companies before. They're not new to our environment. And it's not a specific legal requirement in terms of the tender processes. So we did not look at the financial statements because we accept that when companies put in a bid, they are in sound financial state.
Have you issued a tender before that is, more than 15 billion rand as the health department?
Well, our tenders are very big. So we have the vaccine tender for the childhood vaccines, which is going to be released soon. We have oral solid dosage forms, our tablet tenders. So we have very large value tenders as well. It's not just the ARVs.
Yeah, but I'm saying before. So you have had instances where tenders have gone beyond 15 billion rand, yeah? And even in those cases, you've never had to ask for financial statements. Haven't you? Because some members of parliament argued that there are some companies that have been asked to provide the proof of financial capacity before.
It depends on the type of tender that you are doing. So it's so for some tenders, it may be a special condition of contract that they must submit financial statements or financial records of some kind. But in our tenders, and even in the time when Treasury was doing the pharmaceutical tenders, financial statuses was not a requirement.
Have you found alternatives to ensure that there are no disruptions of treatment for HIV patients? What have you done since you made that realization to ensure that we're not going to see any interruptions?
Okay, so what we did at the outset was award to multiple suppliers. So for the one pack size, for the 30-day pack size, we awarded to 7 or 8 suppliers, and the 90-day pack size, we awarded to 7 suppliers. And that's done deliberately because we understand that within the contract period, there may be any number of risks that any supplier may experience. So what we have written into our contracts is we are doing this multi-supplier award, but the understanding is that should any one supplier or any 2 or 3 suppliers fail, then we will then, call upon our other suppliers to take up the shortfall in terms of the volume.
Yeah.
And it's not a new thing. It's not for this tender. We've done it all the years, even pre-COVID. And it's worked well for us, and our suppliers understand how we manage the situation. So we make sure that no patient goes without medicine because of a supply issue at a national level.
And how many other people how many other suppliers do you have here?
So for the one pack size, a 28-day pack size, we have 8 suppliers. For the 90-day pack size, we have 7 suppliers.
And have any monies been paid to these 2 companies that went into business rescue?
So no, okay, the way it works is we put the contracts in place, the provinces place orders, and upon delivery of those orders, the provinces pay the suppliers. Currently, I doubt that any orders have been delivered by the 2 companies.
Okay.
Just to note, Clement, that the 2 companies are now out of business rescue. So we expect supply to stabilize.
All right. Khadija Jamaloodien, thank you so much for making time for us. She's the Chief Director for Health Product Procurement at the National Health Department. All right, let's break you some breaking news now and take you live to our SABC News reporter, Griselda Lewis, who is back at the scene of a crime in Hyde Park in Johannesburg. That's where 2 suspects, you'll remember earlier today, including the son of the former Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe, were arrested after allegedly shooting and critically injuring a gardener. Griselda, good evening to you. What's been happening there at the scene? We understand that there was a vehicle that was seized.
You'll say Q, Griselda.
Griselda, I'm not sure if you can hear us. I'm asking what's currently happening now at the scene.
Well, Clement, I can confirm to you at this hour that police have now widened their investigation looking for this missing gun, which is alleged to have been used here at this crime scene where the gardener at the home of the son of Zimbabwe's former president, Robert Mugabe, where the shooting took place. Police divers, we understand, are now being brought in. Now, Clement, I do understand that these police divers are being brought in. I understand that part of searching is the swimming pool in this yard. Now, you would recall that a little bit earlier on, after the son of the late former president of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, was taken from the crime scene, at the time he was taken in for questioning, police later confirming that he had been arrested together with another suspect. So 2 individuals haven't been taken. You see, much more light is now being brought in. The area around here is a bit dark, Clement. So what I can tell you at this hour is that police divers are going to be brought in. Remember, missing a key part of this incident, the one that was used to shoot the gardener. As you can see right here in front of me is the head of the crime detectives here in Gauteng. And that is Major General Mbuso Khumalo, who's been in charge of the operations here. Now, at this hour, I do understand these divers, one of the divers who is in charge is going to go into the premises. I understand that the pool is going to be searched, and he will then come out, and then I think there are another two of these divers who are likely to go in. At this particular stage, I cannot confirm to you if at all. There you go. There are some of those individuals that are entering the crime scene at this particular stage. We'll only learn a bit later on exactly what it is they might have found inside. There's a belief at this particular stage from police that they do need to search the swimming pool, and that is why these divers have been brought in. Also, Clement, I can certainly tell you this evening's crime scene, which is still very much active, has been quite the scene of a movie, if I also sees this evening here at the premises of the home of the son of President of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, is a vehicle, a black BMW. Now let me tell you what happened there. You'd recall a bit earlier on, Robert Mugabe's son had been whisked away from these premises. Police had come back to the scene, and on their arrival here, this BMW that we showed you a little bit earlier on, unfortunately, which is now covered by this emergency vehicle, was leaving the premises. There were 3 occupants, we understand, 2 males and a female. Now, that particular vehicle, that black BMW, is not a police car. However, it is fitted with a police siren, and that has now been seized. So police need to still give us an update about whether the individuals in that vehicle have been taken in for questioning or what the situation is regarding that. But at this particular stage, at this moment, those police divers, we understand, have now gone inside or gone onto the premises. They are likely to search the swimming pool here at the premises where this incident took place, and I guess we're likely to hear indeed if they were successful or not. There is a belief at this particular point. I see more people heading inside. I think I'm going to ask my colleague Bulelani to just try to do so with a bit of Clement, just stay with me for a second, please. I do apologize for how we will be moving at this particular stage. I just want to show you, this is where the divers have gone in, and Clement, once again, this is the vehicle that is fitted with the police siren that has now been seized by police, and this particular vehicle had those 3 occupants inside. They were leaving as police were returning to the scene to continue searching for this missing firearm. Now these divers have gone inside. I understand they're going to search this pool. Now you asked the question, why wasn't the pool probably searched a little bit earlier on? But I do understand that it is quite murky. For lack of a better word, it's not really a clean pool, if I may, and police now obviously have to, or these divers have to now go in and search that particular spot because there seems to be a belief that possibly Clement, that particular missing firearm might be in there. I cannot confirm at this stage what they will find at all, because this emergency vehicle has just arrived. Those divers have gone inside. We'll wait to hear what they say once they come out. So the story keeps developing every single moment, Clement, and I can certainly tell you that with these divers now being brought in, there seems to be a belief on the part of police that inside that particular pool they might find something. We do not know at this particular stage what they are going to find. They made their way inside this premises a few moments ago, and remember, it's a crucial part of this particular investigation, because a little bit earlier on when we spoke to police only told us what they found here were cartridges. That is all they found. They didn't find bullet casings or anything, but they were also looking for this firearm, and that's the reason why the 2 suspects, including the son of former President of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, that is why police took so long to whisk the 2 suspects away from here, precisely because police, I understand, that asked them to show them where the gun is, but there was nothing successful coming out of that at that particular stage. But police are led to believe at this particular point, according to my understanding, that these divers now have gone inside, and you will see once again in charge of operations here would be the head of detectives in Gauteng, Major General Mbuso Khumalo, who was basically, when those divers came through, a little briefing took place, and the understanding is that, look, there might be something that police believe can be found in the swimming pool at this crime scene. Take a look, here we go. You have some of those who have gone inside. The investigation, of course, still very active at this particular point. They are part of the team that has been sent inside to go and do these investigations. And let me tell you, Clement, once again, I think quite important to point out, this particular vehicle that has been seized, which is not a police vehicle, that has a police siren. Haven't we heard quite a lot of this at the Madlanga Commission, what has been beamed on South Africa's televisions over the past couple of days about cars that are not meant to have police sirens, This one is not authorized, we understand, from police to have a police siren, and we're just going to show you now perhaps what is going to be brought out of, all right, some machinery being brought in. Well, that's literally just a very long extension cord, and we'll also show you perhaps what else has been brought in here. There seems to be a belief on the part, of course, of this search team that there might be something that could be found in the swimming pool. We don't know at this particular stage whether that is going to be confirmed at a later stage. We will remain here on location, Clement, but of course, breaking news I can say at this hour is that the police divers, take a look at that. That is certainly an oxygen mask that is being brought in. What looks to be an oxygen mask. I beg your pardon there, Clement. I certainly cannot tell you for sure, but this is certainly machinery that could be used for a search inside a swimming pool. We don't know what is going to be found, but this is material. Let's just quickly go this direction. I think we're being called at this particular direction. Here we are, the police divers. I'm going to ask my colleague Bulelani Scott to come with me. Here they are. All right, this is definitely them. These are the police divers that have been brought in, Clement, and they are the ones that are going to do the search. Of course, the search and rescue teams that have been brought in here, it's a multidisciplinary team that has been brought in. Just take a look there, search and rescue. These are part of the divers. Here is the head of the crime detectives in Gauteng, who have been brought in. The head, of course, being Major General. There he is giving them a briefing, and they are part of the team. And this is part of the team that is going in at this stage. There seems to be a huge belief that police might be onto something in that swimming pool, and we'll wait to see if we're going to get any further confirmation, if they've been successful regarding that. The story developing, I can tell you certainly I'll ask my Bulelani, please come this way. Just take a look inside the house there. If my colleague, it's a bit dark, but you can see quite a number of the members of the South African Police Service, the sniffer dogs, as well as now the divers, gone in to go and investigate what they might find in this particular pool. Remember, the two suspects themselves are facing a rap pertaining to attempted murder, this relating, of course, to the shooting of the gardener at this particular premises. And of course, one of those in custody is the son of former President Robert Mugabe, and police at this particular stage still on location, still at the scene, and now that swimming pool is going to be searched. The divers have been brought in, and they are now going to search the swimming pool to try and see if they can find this very important piece of the puzzle, which is this gun, which is still missing. Whether the circumstances of that will change at a later stage, we cannot say. We'll have to wait until the authorities are done with their investigations inside that swimming pool. And I can certainly tell you, at this stage, it's still very active in terms of the crime scene itself. So for police to have gotten to that particular direction of the swimming pool, we're of course not privy to what a part, I guess, of the interrogation would have been of the suspects, but what police certainly were looking for is the firearm. It's a crucial piece of this particular crime investigation, and at this particular stage, no indication. Look, from what my sources are telling me at this particular stage, Clement, is that the suspects are unlikely to appear in court tomorrow, but that is likely to change. We don't know or have much information according to the court appearances at this stage, but the police are hoping, together with these divers, that this crucial piece of this puzzle, which would be the firearm, would possibly be found where they are searching at this particular stage, and it is the swimming pool where these divers have been brought into. We'll keep you live on these visuals. If there are any further developments there, Clement, we'll certainly update us here on SABC News, but live from Hyde Park in Johannesburg, where police divers have now been brought into the Mugabe crime scene, looking for the missing part of the puzzle of this investigation, which is the gun which is believed to have been used in the shooting of the gardener here at the home of the former president of Zimbabwe, the son, of course, who is believed was found at these premises, of course, where the incident took place. And this is where, of course, the police will be searching the swimming pool. We can confirm that those divers have now arrived. Clement.
All right, Griselda Lewis, live to us from Hyde Park. Thank you so much for that comprehensive update, and she'll be back with you at the top of the hour for the latest. But it does read like a movie script. Divers now brought in to look for the gun that was supposedly used to shoot the gardener, but then also this vehicle that is fitted with police sirens, and yet it's not registered with the police. More details are coming up throughout the night here on SABC News. Let's move to this now. US President Donald Trump is presiding over the first meeting of his Board of Peace today. That meeting took place earlier. He has told the meeting that the United States is pledging about $10 billion to a Gaza reconstruction fund. Trump says other nations have raised about $7 billion as an initial down payment for the reconstruction. Trump first proposed the board last September when he announced his plan to end Israel's war in Gaza. He later announced that the board would be expanded beyond Gaza to tackle other conflicts worldwide. France has expressed surprise that the European Commission had sent a commissioner to the meeting, saying it did not have the mandate to represent member states. Let's bring in Maya Ungar, who is a United Nations analyst from the International Crisis Group, live to us from Washington, D.C., joining us now via video link. Thank you so much for making time for us. Maya, good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
So there are a lot of questions around what the mandate of this board is going to be. Is it going to replace the United Nations? From what you have picked up so far, from what's come out of this meeting, is there any clarity of how this board is going to operate?
I think that there are more questions from answers still to how the board will operate and the main focus. You know, a number of Arab states who have joined the board have made it clear that they see the board's mandate as necessary to focus on Gaza reconstruction, as was authorized by the Security Council in November of this year. President Trump and some of his key allies have looked at expanding the focus of the board. But I think what we can clearly see is that the Board of Peace, as it is envisioned right now and as it has been operating, doesn't have the capacity or ability to replace the United Nations as a system, but there are real concerns over the potential delegitimization of the Security Council in the UN in this field.
Yeah, and speaking of the United Nations, President Trump earlier noted that if the United Nations needs help, money-wise, the Board of Peace is prepared to step in. In fact, his words were that, you know, we can work very closely with the United Nations moving forward, looking over the United Nations and making sure it runs properly. I mean, that's extraordinary. I mean, what is he suggesting then about this board somehow being an authority institution over the United Nations and watching over it and assisting it with finances?
I mean, I think that this comment was a surprise to many. The Board of Peace is authorized to do its work as an institution under the Security Council. So if anything, the authorization comes from the United Nations itself instead of the opposite way around. Now, the United States is the biggest contributor to the United Nations, and in that way is able to obviously influence policy and oversee how the UN is performing its operations. However, they are over $2 billion in debt right now to the United Nations and have only unlocked a real minimal amount of the funds from even this year that they were supposed to pay. So there's a big question to me of tactically, how do you actually oversee the United Nations as a Board of Peace without the mandate to do so? And also if you've given up much of your leverage, which is the financing, by not actually providing the assessed contributions you already owe to the institution.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering here if some of the board members of this organization may at some point start making payments to the Board of Peace as opposed to the United Nations. Is there concern at the United Nations around its financial stability, given that the US has been threatening not to continue with its mandatory payments? And who knows if the US president is going to somehow convince the other members of the board who are signatories and members of the United Nations not to also meet their obligations there. What would be the consequences?
Yeah, I mean, the United Nations is in a massive financial crisis as it is right now. By January of this year, there was a 20% cut of staff to the previous year. Operations around the world are closing down, and this means that less people are being fed, less people are being vaccinated and kind of sheltered around the world. Now, I don't think that the Board of Peace is going to actually implicate the way that different countries pay into the United Nations, and that's primarily because even of those that have signed up, you've seen a real hesitancy to provide funds to the Board of Peace. So you did have about $7 billion unlocked for or pledged from different countries for Gaza reconstruction, but there was no clarity on saying this would go to the Board of Peace. In fact, very easily, this money could go towards the United Nations. Yeah. It simply was a platform. The Board of Peace was a platform where these pledges were announced. And I think there's a lot of concern from many member states that paying into the Board of Peace is essentially a slush fund for President Trump to do what he will with that money. Yeah,
I mean, because who knows what his powers are going to extend to. I mean, it seems like he's going to be the permanent chair of this institution, even beyond his office. Maya Ungar, thank you so much for making time for us. She's a United Nations analyst live to us from Washington, D.C. Let's wrap up with this now. The South African Local Government Association has welcomed President Cyril Ramaphosa's renewed focus on fixing local government. In his State of the Nation address, the president outlined reforms aimed at tackling the root causes of dysfunction in many of the country's municipalities and improving service delivery. But SALGA has pushed back against the threat of criminal prosecution for municipalities that fail to provide water. Remember, Ramaphosa revealed that government has already lodged criminal complaints against 56 municipalities and may pursue municipal managers in their personal capacity for contravening the National Water Act. Let's now bring in a representative, Tami Ngubane, who's a representative from SALGA, who's joining us now via video link. Thank you so much for making time for us, Tami. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Manyatela. Thanks for inviting us. Much appreciated.
Why are you against the president's plan to go after municipalities who are failing to meet their obligations and particularly lay charges against these municipal managers in their personal capacity?
Well, we believe that it is not a straightforward matter. Remember, we are a constitutional democracy. If you go to Section 1 of the Constitution, it outlines the foundational values upon which the system will be based. And one of them is the supremacy of the Constitution and the rule of law. And if you go to criminal law, there are about 6 general principles. The first key that opens the first door on criminal law is the issue of the principle of legality. Now, before you actually say this conduct is considered as crime, it must be recognized and accepted in terms of the legislation.
Yeah.
That is one. But two, our view is that it's important that we deal with the root cause and not take the shortcuts. Yes, there is a problem of poor public services. Municipalities are providing very important services that we consider as foundational services, because they are foundational because your water, electricity, roads, and so on, whether in the economy or where people are living, the people can actually operate without those services. So our view is that probably we need to actually deal with the root cause.
Yeah.
And it will be very problematic if you are going to say we are going to charge the municipality and be held liable, because in our view, a poor service will obviously fall squarely on the crime that is called materially defined crime.
Yeah.
It's a result crime.
So
it must be cost. When you then say somebody is responsible for that crime, you need to then say, demonstrate that that person is really the cause. There are many factors
the president had indicated that the president had indicated that that's because the water revenue is often used for other areas within the municipality. So what avenues exist right now as you and I speak to deal with instances where water revenue is moved from what it's intended for and it's used in other areas?
Well, our view as SALGA is that the problem is structural. If you go to the 1998 white local government white paper, which then outlines the landscape and then focus on the financial model, you understand that municipalities only receive 10% of the revenue nationally that is collected at the national level by SARS. We only get 10%. That is in accordance with the 1998 white paper. And the 90%, how should we finance our functions allocated by the Constitution? We are expected to actually finance them from the self-generated revenue. So we make money from providing electricity, from charging rate, but also from providing water. So the money that you generate there must also cross-subsidize and deal also with other functions.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean you have to
blame
move
municipalities for that. The problem is actually structural.
Yeah,
you need
but you can't move the money though completely and send it to other priorities. The president is not saying, some of the money. The president says sometimes there's water revenue. Here it is, 10 million rand or whatever the case is. But the municipality then thinks, okay, we would rather spend this money elsewhere, which is why I asked, as you and I speak now, what are the avenues that are available to hold municipal managers accountable? Because how else then do we ensure consequence management? Because sometimes it's the inefficiencies of these officials in the municipalities that result to disruptions in services.
Now, the problem, Mr. Manyatela, is that the challenge doesn't flow from a single causal factor. It comes from multifactorial causation. For instance, we provide the service, but the customers, the household customers, including government and business, they are not meeting their obligations. We are being owed billions by the very same government. And even the households, most people are unable to pay us. So which then affects us not be able to be in a position to reinvest that money back even to the service. And some of the municipalities are even owing water boards. It is because the customers, the household customers, including government and also the business, are not meeting their obligation, which then serves as a constraint. So I'm saying It's not just a single factor that the money is there and the money is being redirected. That is not accurate.
Okay.
I don't think there's been a study that suggests that the people are meeting their obligations and the municipalities are then redirecting. Well, that is partially true, but it's not. It is far from being from the whole picture.
The president indicated.
Partially correct.
The president indicated that if municipalities can offer these kind of services, there must be a structure that is responsible for that. Are we talking here about a task team or a municipality being placed under administration? How do you think a SALGA government can intervene constitutionally in these municipalities? Because it seems like that's where the president is going.
Well, I think this is not a new discovery. As early as 2012, the national government established a National Planning Commission, identified all the main challenges that are facing this country, that remains an obstacle in the development of this country. One of the main challenges identified by National Planning Commission from research is poor service, poor public service. And they also then answered the question, what needs to be done? They then said, we need to build a capable and ethical state as a strategy to deal with the issue of poor public service. So as SALGA, we have actually defined the nuts and bolts of that pillar of building capable and ethical state. We have called for professionalization that will ensure that you establish a professional body that is going to admit people to the profession as municipal managers, as CFO, as engineers. Before they can be appointed, they must be in that role being admitted by a professional body. And once they're in the profession, they must also maintain the professional and ethical standard. If they fail, this professional body independently must track them off the roll.
Okay.
So I think we need to deal with that, build capable and ethical state. Fix the issue of the financial model of the municipality. The current one is based on invalid assumptions. So go back and study what were the assumptions of the 1998 white paper. We need to change the financial model of the municipality, because most of the money must come from the national fiscus.
Yeah, the president did speak about the revised white paper on local government, which reimagines the way our local government will work. Tami Ngubane, SALGA NEC member, thank you so much for joining us on Face the Nation this evening. And thanks to you for watching. We'll be back with you on Tuesday at 8 p.m. Have a good evening. Cheers.